mentioned, our first speaker is Lisa Oro, who's a registered nurse and midwife and manages the Victorian Maternity and Newborn Child Clinical Network. But the reason she's here today is that she's the mother to 3 boys, the eldest, who's diagnosed with type 1 diabetes at the age of 12. 3 years into the diagnosis, Lisa is a JDRF peer support mentor, advocate for insulin for life, and hates it when people ask her if her son's diabetes is under control. Please welcome Lisa.
While waiting for this presentation to come up, as declared, I am a registered nurse, I'm a registered midwife, and I do manage the Maternity and Newborn Clinical Network, but nothing prepared me for caring, you can't hear that better, nothing prepared me for caring for a child with type 1 diabetes. Can I ask first if there's anyone here in the room that has type 1 diabetes or cares for anyone with it? Okay, you guys can remain seated. Everyone else stand up. How many of you have started a diet, had a New Year's resolution that you didn't stick to? I want you to sit down. How many of you joined a gym that you thought you might take a day off from, not go because you're a bit tired? I want you to sit down. How many of you might have got a pedometer and thought, I'm going to do those 10,000 steps today, but I didn't quite make it, I left my pedometer behind? How many of you thought that you would like to be on a diet, but thought, I'll just start it tomorrow, I want to have that piece of cake today? It doesn't leave many people left, but when you talk about, you wonder why these children don't adhere, why they don't pump, why they don't push the buttons, well, why didn't you stick to what you did? That's where I want to start. So this is my son, this is Charlie, this is what type 1 diabetes looks like. JDRF put out this great campaign, probably last year I think. He's just a small one in a sea of type 1 diabetes. Now all these are families in Victoria. I belong to an online group called Mighty One Connect. There's 300 Victorian families. If you need to tap into someone, you've got a great consumer voice right there and then. We speak to each other online, we know what's going on around the state. I sit back, I don't say much because of where I work, I feel I can't. But today, as I said to Paulette, I'm a consumer and I can say what I want. So this is Charlie. On the left, this was him in the February before he was diagnosed. You can see he's just about to start secondary school. He was just about to start year 7. He's looking happy and healthy. Now I actually knew that there was something wrong with him, but I couldn't put my finger on what it was. I'd taken him to the GP 8 months earlier. He was getting up through the night to go to the toilet, but I didn't have any indication that he was drinking anymore. We only have water in our house. We don't drink juice, we don't have soft drink. So he was just helping himself to tap water. Completely missed that he had type 1 diabetes. Despite my grandmother being an insulin dependent, what they thought was type 2, but we think late onset type 1. My father being a type 2 diabetic, and my mother having gestational diabetes. I missed it. It wasn't until we went to Tasmania that I had to fly across late for work, and my husband said to me, gee, he drinks a lot of water. And I just looked at him and I said, how much water? What do you mean? And he said, litres. And I knew there and then that my son was a type 1 diabetic. The photo with him, that's him in emergency. And the reason I've got that photo there, this is probably the hardest slide for me to talk to, and I hope I can speak through it without getting emotional. We had, the luck was on our side that day that he was admitted. He was admitted the day before Good Friday. The nurse in me thought, oh my God, the staff are all going to be short-staffed, we're going into the worst weekend of the year, and it's Easter. We arrived, and the other part of me is thinking, okay, all the new staff have started in February. Is anyone actually going to be able to put an IV in this child? And I was very nervous. I actually went to the GP first to get a referral. Why would I do that? Because I thought emergency is going to be busy. We'll go to the GP. The blood glucose, so when we hit, his blood glucose was 32, his ketones were 6, and his pH was 7.2. We walked in, and how lucky were we? There was a resident who was a type 1 diabetic that met us at the door. And she was amazing, and I hope she sees this video because I haven't been able to track her down, or this webinar. She was the right person at the right place at the right time for us, and she was an advocate for us when I didn't have a voice for it. You'll see the little MLAR patches on his hands. Now, this is where I find it really hard to speak to. I'm advocate for people all the time. I'm quite confident doing it. When it came to put his IV in, we had a senior reg came in, and he was about to put the IV in, and the nurse said, I'll just go and get some cream. And he said, why? It's not like he's not going to have to get used to injections. I didn't have a voice for my son at that point in time, but I had the most amazing nurse that stood in front of him and said, "Not today." This is how he announced it via social media. Got diabetes. So this was taken Easter Sunday in hospital. This is the only time I've ever heard him cry. There was an Easter hunt going on outside his door. He pulled the covers over his head and he cried. And he came out and he said to me, "Am I going to die from this?" And I said to him, "I honestly can't answer that, mate, but I can tell you one thing, not on my watch, and I mean it." We went home fairly early, injecting. One thing that was highlighted, I knew most of the staff, and can I say Ballarat Health Services are amazing. They do a fantastic job, so wherever they are, I know they're here. Big shout out to them. Very, very impressed with their paediatric team and how they've dealt with Charlie over the years. Apart from that little glitch in emergency, everyone else has been amazing. And I'm quite critical. We went home injecting early. One of the points my husband said to me early on, he said, "Everyone's directing the education to you." Now, I knew a lot of the staff there, and I didn't realise it. I was just trying so hard to be a good nurse and a good mother and get it right, but I didn't realise that they weren't speaking to my husband or he felt excluded. So I intentionally went home one night and left him to do the injections. Somewhere in the communication, I'd been giving him the injections because I knew what to do. It was familiar. He hadn't been watching me giving the injections, and all his reference was one of the army films. I think it's either Black Hawk Down or one of those, where they pull it off and jab it in, and that's what he did, much to the amusement of the staff. But Charlie thought, actually, I can't do any worse, so he started injecting himself from that day on. We actually transitioned to a pump fairly on, and I knew that that was quite controversial. But for Charlie, it's given his life back. I know there's not a lot of evidence around long-term efficacy for it, but it meant he didn't have to lift his top up in front of 200 other boys and inject himself at lunchtime. He could discreetly administer insulin if we go out for dinner. I don't know what the long-term effects are, if it's going to improve his eyesight, save his renal function, but I do know for a kid, if he wants to sleep in on a Saturday, he can. One of the biggest things that was said to us as we were leaving the hospital was, "Gee, you're in for a big lifestyle change." And I thought, I've got this. I'm a nurse. We eat well, we're fit, we're not overweight. Lifestyle change, I can do this. And I remember one nurse saying to me, "Look, we had another family a couple of years ago. The mum was a nurse and we haven't seen them come back." And I thought, I don't know why you'd think we'd be coming back. But the simple things are no longer simple. It's, food. You have to count every single carbohydrate. And I know we talk about carb counting and that's relatively easy, but let's look at this bread roll. Depending on where you buy it from, Baker's Delight don't actually list on the back of their packets what carbohydrate counts in it. Anything that's baked on site doesn't list what carbohydrate content's on it. You have to ask for a printout, or you have to go online and look it up. What teenager's going to do that? And really, would you do that? So we tend to avoid certain foods. Generally you're looking at about half the weight in carbohydrates, but we actually make our own Swedish bun. It's got 7 grams of carbohydrates, so I know what to measure and I know what to put in it. The same with the muffin. The muffin sizes are getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and we have an issue with schools. They have donuts at his school that are so big it's about 80 grams just in that one donut for carbohydrate. We make our own muffins at home and we use almond meal, so the carbohydrate count's 5. So you can have 10 of those if you want, which is the same as just one of the Brumbies muffins. My challenge to you is to count the number of carbohydrates that you're going to get in your lunchbox today when you eat. And you're not allowed to eat until you're confident that you know what they are. And I want you to speak to the person, pick a partner and tell them what you think is in that box. Because if you're a type 1 diabetic, you can't start to eat till you know exactly what's in that food. And that's everything. That's your bread, that's your carrots, that's your peas, that's your corn, that's everything. And they do this 7 days a week. When they're at lunch in front of their friends at school, that's what they do. And it's time consuming, it's exhausting. The simple things are no longer simple. Sleep. This is a beautiful photo of myself. I was up one night, he was having a hypo and I just couldn't get it back up and I had to entertain myself somehow. So I took a photo and posted it on the Mighty One Connect, asking everyone else to put photos of themselves, how they actually take their blood glucose of their kids through the night. And that's my beautiful torch in the mouth style. The one eye shut, because if you don't want to wake yourself up too much by opening 2 eyes, if you keep one shut, then you can go back to sleep pretty easily. And I have actually dropped the torch on his head, and he he said in the morning, I said, "Are you all right?" He said, "I've got this mark." And I said, "I don't know what happened." But the freedom to do what you want is suddenly taken away from you. Everything requires extensive planning and thought, and more planning and more thought. Carb counting seems easy until you really try and do it. The sleep, and really, people say, "Gee, we still check him through the night." The CGM hopefully will make a difference, but I'm in two minds, and I'm meeting with Fiona on Monday, wherever you are. I'm going to chat to you about the CGM because I'm not sure which way to go. But when you wake up each morning and you say thank you that your child has made it through the night, then you know you're living with type 1 diabetes. This is very real for all parents, and it's something that we struggle with. And it's a fear that doesn't leave you. Are they too high? Are they too low? And I'd never even heard of dead in bed. I didn't even know what that was. Now I know that's not common, but I also know that it happens. I know that there's some recent research that indicates it might be an undiagnosed cardiac condition. So should we ask the question, should we be doing a routine ECG as part of their annual check? I know that both his brothers have arrhythmias. I don't know whether he does. We've never had it checked. The one before was my alarm clock. And we actually, the way we work in our house is we tag team. Our day starts at midnight. My husband stays up to midnight. He does a blood glucose then. We have a conversation around what it is, and we work out then what's required after that. I normally get up at 5 o'clock every day. This morning, the last 2 mornings, I'll give you an example of how variable it can be. Nothing's changed for him other than we think we had line failure. He woke up yesterday with a blood glucose of 3.2, and he woke up this morning with a blood glucose of 16.5. Nothing changed. I don't know why we've got such variations with that. I had to send him to school yesterday. I don't know how long he'd been low for. He was really shaky having his breakfast. I sent him to school because he misses enough school as it is. We got him up to a certain level, but the first thing that he had yesterday was PE, so he just crashed after that, and he ended up bouncing home, and I couldn't get his blood glucose up for most of the day. Went to bed with a normal blood glucose. At midnight, he was 8. At 5 o'clock this morning, when I got up, he was 16.5. At 8 o'clock, he was 14. And I'm not actually sure what he is. I've got my phone sitting over there, and I'm hoping that he's okay, not bouncing back up again. When I walk into his room, this is what I see. And I have a little routine that I open the door and the door creaks. And if I hear him move, I think he's okay, that's good. If I don't hear him move, I feel the warmth on my face. I think, yeah, it feels warm. Because if someone's alive and breathing, it's generally warm. I turn around and have a look at him, and I try and judge using my midwifery skills where his back is. So I don't have to fossick around too much to find his hands and feet and disturb him too much. Sometimes he curls up, it's like he knows, and you really have to wedge your finger out to take that level. There's often blood spots on the bed that remind me that I'm going to have to wash these sheets tomorrow, because this is a constant reminder of what we're doing to him. But it doesn't matter how gentle you are, his sleep's always disrupted. Yet he gets up, he doesn't complain, and he goes to school the next day. Type 1 diabetes is a numbers game, and if you get it wrong, the results are unforgiving. It's either unforgiving in the short term or it's unforgiving in the long term. And it's a burden that weighs heavily on me. I have nursed patients that have lost their eyesight, that have lost their legs, and have lost their renal function. And I just don't want that to happen to them. This is a snapshot of the Medtronic. It's not very clear. We've been having a lot of trouble with lines lately. You can see there's a blood glucose that's up about 20. We've had, and I was just chatting to these guys before, I don't know if there's any regulatory body that I can speak to, but we've had with the quick set lines, no delivery. We've had his third pump in 3 years that was delivered in only a month ago, and there's a particular batch of lines that do not work. It seems to have the basal rates okay, but we try and bolus, and it says no delivery. And it's when he tries to sit down to eat, so we've been doing subcut. I don't know what to do. I rang Medtronic, and they will not replace unopened boxes. I've got 3 boxes sitting at home, and what am I supposed to do with that? I've paid for them. The pharmacy doesn't take them back. Pharmacies don't stock the product. You go in and you order it. They will not take it. If it's the wrong delivery and you've ordered the wrong thing, they won't take it back. You're stuck with it. I've got this photo. You'll be thrilled. None of the boys knew about these shots. The reason I've got this one up here is just to show you, and it's a question that I've got as well. This is Christmas Day. My mum passed away in July last year, and diabetes doesn't wait for anyone. Whether you're writing a eulogy or you're attending a funeral, you still have to manage it. And Christmas Day, we spent it with my husband's family, and at 5 o'clock we decided we'd come down to Melbourne and just spend the night with my sister. I packed 3 sets of pump supplies, which I thought would be enough to get me through. And when we got there, it was really hot on Christmas Day, and they've got a pool, so the kids jumped in the pool. They swam for 2 hours. He got out, his blood glucose was 15, which is fine. Mind you, this is the first time he's ever got in the pool. He's been really self-conscious about his line. He's been really self-conscious about getting in front of people, and he did it, and I was so proud of him for doing it. So I said, don't worry, mate. He just reconnected. He's independent. He reconnected, gave himself a bolus, said just check in half an hour, and he was 20. I went, oh, it's probably failed. So he did another line set change, beautiful. Checked again in half an hour, he was 24. And at this point, we're getting to about 11 o'clock at night, and I had 1 line set left. And I went, oh, that's okay, we'll grab the syringe and we'll just give you subcut injection if this isn't working. When I realised I'd left the syringes in Ballarat, we live in Ballarat and my sister was in Melbourne, and I went, oh, okay, right, what do I do? And his blood glucose climbed to 29 and he then had ketones. And we had the 1 set left. I said, put that 1 set in. And it's midnight. I said, you go to sleep. I'm Googling pharmacies that might be open so I could go and get a syringe. I knew what to do. I knew how to manage him. I just didn't have the equipment with me. And then it occurred to me, I actually didn't know who to ring. I thought, do I ring? If I ring Monash or if I ring the kids, we're not a patient there. Can I ring and just come in and get syringes, or do I have to wake him up and bring him with me? Can I present somewhere and say, I've got a child who's a type 1 diabetic, I just need a syringe? Then I thought maybe I could just go to a needle exchange place and pick up a syringe. So I'm Googling needle exchange. I actually don't know what the answer is. And I jumped onto my beautiful online community and I said, I don't know what to do. And people said, we'll come and bring syringes to you. And that's what they do. And they do that 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. There's people driving around Victoria delivering supplies if we run out. I still don't know the answer. So if I ring, maybe someone can answer that for me later. There was no point ringing Ballarat because they're in Ballarat paging the reg to do what? What could they do? But I knew what to do. I knew how to manage it. I just didn't have the equipment. And that was my fault. We won't make that mistake again. Things like braces. Charlie, poor bugger, he had braces put on about 2 weeks after he was diagnosed. And I went in beforehand and I said, listen, he's just been diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. Will this be a problem? No, it's not a problem. We'll note it on his file. That's great. We got in there. They put the mould in. He was still injecting at that point. As he put the mould in, he's vomited. We'd bolus for a beautiful big breakfast. He lost his breakfast. Gone, oh, shit. And the dental nurse was really quite rude to me. She felt I was overreacting, and I thought, no, he's got a massive lot of insulin on board and no breakfast now. And once you put them on, we sorted through that. We were taken into a room where they educated the foods you can and can't eat, and they presented a list of foods that you can't eat, which is juices, lollies, and it showed him a beautiful graphic photo of what would happen if he had those lollies. And I said, you do realise he's a type 1 diabetic, and if he has a low blood glucose, he needs sugar to bring him up? And she said, he'll just have to have sugar-free lollies. And I went, well, there's no point having a conversation because she doesn't understand what I'm talking about. But what it meant for him is every time he had a hypo, he got up and cleaned his teeth. And it didn't matter if it was 3 o'clock in the morning, he got up and cleaned his teeth. And if he needed 4 lots of treatment, every 15 minutes for that hour, he cleaned his teeth up at each one. His teeth are beautiful, by the way. The braces are on. Travel's turned out to be something that I didn't expect would be difficult. When we go on a plane or when we go away, particularly a plane, we pack 2 bags. We split the supplies over 2 bags in case one gets lost or crushed. We make sure the insulin's unopened with his name on it. We make sure we have a letter from his GP to carry through to prove what he's got. Things are no longer simple. Airport security has turned into a logistical nightmare. There was a family that were kept aside in Dubai. I'm not sure if you're aware of them, because the son had a pump and they wouldn't let him go through the body scanner, and they kept them off their plane. And so there's a global petition going around their pumps and allowing them to go through airport security. With him, try and find the piece of paper. He's been pulled aside. We're trying to approach it so this is normal, so it's not a frustration for him. Everyone gets pulled aside. But he's been pulled aside for a full pat down with a queue of people behind him. He's been made to take his shoes off. He's been pulled aside for a sniffer dog to come through. Just recently we went to Canberra. We had to open the full supplies before it went through the scanner. He can go through the metal detector, but an actual full body scanner, he can't have his pump connected. It voids the warranty, and you won't. And it's a $12,000 pump. So he's had drug testing, sniffer dog. We were asked if there were syringes in the bag. Yes, there were this time because I was organised. But that presented a problem. And that was before it went through the scanner. They stop, they pull you aside after it. I had a standoff with an Australian official, who looked a bit like this, who wanted him to go through the body scanner with his pump on. I said, he can't, he's a type 1 diabetic, take me, I'll go in. And he said, no, diabetics can go in there. I said, he can go in without the pump, but the pump's not going in there. And so I'm trying to advocate and teach him not to just do it, to be strong and to go, no, I'm within my right, I'm not going into that. I've got 5 minutes, okay, I'll look through. Taking off, you have to disconnect your pump because you get air bubbles and you have to prime the line out. On landing, you need to disconnect and prime it out. If you're going through different flight zones, you have to change your glucometer to match your pump. He does all that on his own now. He's learned how to do it. This is a photo taken at the War Museum, and you'll see that's his backpack that sticks with him everywhere. You scanned as you go in, scanned, opened everything up, it was all fine. Went to walk through the museum when he was pulled aside and told he couldn't take his bag with him. It's got his glucometer and his supplies in it. So that's okay, mate. I said it's got medical supplies in it. Well, pulled aside for 20 minutes while they decided whether he could or couldn't go through. Then they got a lovely big sticker that said first aid and stuck it across his backpack, but he wasn't allowed to carry it over his shoulder. He had to carry it beside him. The amount of women with handbags that were bigger than that, walking around undisturbed, was incredible. My lesson, I'll take a handbag next time. School. School's a real challenge. And there's some schools that are doing really, really well, and we need to look to those schools to see what they're doing well. I met a principal last week who was amazing, and he's a fantastic advocate and doing a brilliant job. This is Charlie's Diabetes Action Plan, and one of the concerns I have, I guess, is that no one's trained to give glucagon at his school. If he collapses, the best they can do is turn him on his side. The nurse in me is mortified at that. I'm just horrified at that. On the flip side, if he's high and I'm in Melbourne, I'm 3 hours away. I work in Melbourne, I live in Ballarat. And I said to him last night, what happens, mate, if your blood glucose is high and you've got ketones and you can't get hold of me? My husband works in court and he can't leave court. And he said, I'll just go to sick bay and tell them the gravity of the situation. Great, mate. What do you expect them to do? And he said, well, what can they do? I said, actually, there's not a lot they can do, but I hope that they can hold you till I can get home. And if I have to catch a taxi back, I will. I've done that before. School camp. Charlie was told he was an occupational health and safety risk and wasn't allowed to go on school camp. We worked closely with the school to make sure that that didn't happen again. That's not uncommon, and it's still happening, and there's still children being excluded from school camps. I made such a fuss that they took him this year, which was to the Grampians, and he signed up for a 21-kilometre hike, which was great. I'm going, that's great. Inside, I'm having a heart attack. No one could give glucagon. No one was trained to give glucagon. They said, we can get him medevaced out though. That's great. Have you got phone coverage? That's terrific. We've walked the Grampians. He goes very low very quickly. Here he is getting his Most Valuable Player basketball award from the school. The school have an end of year, have a program where they get to go to America. We signed up for it, but unfortunately he didn't make it. We were going to send my husband with him. They had so many applicants. The criteria was commitment to school basketball. He's on the elite basketball team, which is the first photo. He got Most Valuable Player, yet he wasn't allowed to go. Because he misses so much school, I tend to ignore other complaints. And they rang me one day and said he's hyperextended his knee in PE. And I went, so? They said, we did need to get a wheelchair to get him out. I went, oh, do you mean I have to come and get him? And they said yes. And I said, I'm sure he's just trying to get out. He wants to train for basketball tonight. I'm sure he's trying to get out of it. It turns out he had the impaction fracture of his lateral tibial plateau, a lineal meniscal tear, and an undisplaced proximal fibular epiphyseal fracture. And I'd sent him to school with Chiba Grip and given him Panadol. I don't want to forget the siblings. I know I'm running out of time. The siblings see and hear everything. They're worried they're going to develop themselves. They see when you're treating a hypo. They're stuck when you have to treat a hypo. This is at the top of the Grampians. He was low. We couldn't go anywhere. They couldn't go anywhere. If it starts raining, you're stuck. You can't go. They see and feel everything. We try and have one-on-one time with the boys and take them away to give them a break and to give them focus because they get missed. This little one is actually learning how to give glucagon. We said to them, Charlie's not your responsibility, something is better than nothing. If the best you can do is ring an ambulance and say what street we're at, that's okay. He is not your responsibility, but he wants to learn how to do it. And if a 10-year-old can do it, I think anyone can do it. The other day, which was only about 2 weeks ago, I walked into the room, Will's only 10, and he was crying. I said, what's wrong, mate? And he said, I've just watched a video, there's a YouTube video of someone on X Factor who had lost their brother. And he was crying because he's worried he's going to lose his brother. Our role for Charlie is we're trying to teach him to educate and advocate. Has anyone seen this? This is last week. The delightful CEO of Starbucks. They launched the unicorn frappe. If you read it, as you sip it, it changes not just colour and flavour, but also blood sugars and insulin resistance, said Starbucks president. If you ask me, that's just as magical as a unicorn. Over these 4 days, we hope to put 90% of Americans into DKA. That's irresponsible. That is DKA. This is from Kisses for Kaisi. This is the American, it was very well publicised. She died. They thought she had gastro. She didn't. She was in DKA. Know the symptoms. If you're a school nurse, know what to look out for. If someone comes in and presents with you think they have gastro, please do a blood glucose test before you send them home. If you think they have the flu, please do a simple blood glucose or a dipstick. I don't care, do something. It's not uncommon. Last year, the CEO of CrossFit put out, make sure you pour some out for your dead homies, open diabetes. It's constant. I think there's an ambivalence to diabetes in our community. I think people think it's a soft disease. I don't think they realise the consequences of it. The Danny Foundation's been very prominent in raising awareness. Danny was 17 when she died several years ago. She went to bed with a normal blood glucose and she didn't wake up in the morning. We're trying to teach Charlie to advocate. There's a group called Insulin for Life. If you don't know about it, get to know about them. They're based in Victoria. I found out about them sitting in diabetes clinic. I picked up a brochure and to my horror realised that they worked out of Ballarat and I had no idea. They take unused insulin supplies, glucometers, strips and send them to third world countries to keep children alive. I simply cannot imagine going to bed at night and not knowing that I had insulin the next day to keep my child alive. They do an amazing job. They're non-for-profit. If you want their details, come to me or take it down. They'll take any of your excess stock. Once something's been, a name's been put on it in Australia, you can't reissue it to someone else. It has to go back to a pharmacy to be destroyed. We can send that to Mauritius, we can send it to Vietnam, we can send it to Thailand, and we can keep people alive. And the last thing, because my time's up, the day we cure type 1 diabetes, we will drop to our knees and cry like we've never cried before.